hashtag choose to challenge and hashtag IWD 2021. Also to say that we'd really like to hear from you during today's event and include your voice in the conversation. So please ask questions, share any comments you may have, use the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your Zoom window to share at any time today during the webinar. There's going to be a 20 to 25 minute slot at the end allocated for Q&A with all of our speakers today, and 1 or 2 questions will be asked immediately following each of our speakers' presentations. So let's get into the main event. So sub-Saharan Africa has the highest proportion of underfinanced MSMEs in the world, standing at 52% of the total financing gap for formal MSMEs, standing at in excess of $320 billion. While female-led businesses make up 30 to 40% of SMEs on the African continent, only 2% of procurement by large institutions and corporations is bought from women. 52% of women-owned SMEs are credit constrained, the highest share amongst the world's emerging market regions. And these are the formal companies. If we were to include a considerable informal sector amongst which women are the major players, these totals would significantly increase, and particularly around the gender gap. However, research shows that adopting a gender lens in business facilitates better business understanding of how to appeal to both genders as customers. This can help businesses create new markets, increase market share, increase their margins and profit. A 2016 study of over 22,000 publicly traded companies across 91 countries demonstrated that companies with women, 30% of women in their leadership, added 6% to their net margin. A further study by Credit Suisse shows that companies with at least one female director have better share performances than those without women director roles. Companies with women at the top consistently make better decisions, produce better products, and retain several key business advantages over more homogeneous companies. Evidence further suggests that commercial companies that reflect demographic characteristics of their markets are better able to respond to changing customer needs and the products developed. Gender inclusion, therefore, we can see, has the power to generate positive business impacts, increase efficiency and market share, improve margins, increase employee satisfaction and retention, and increase effectiveness and efficiency across value chains. Who doesn't want that? In spite of all of this, female-led businesses are still perceived to be riskier, meaning they miss out on many investment opportunities. Self-Help Africa, as part of the work of the Goethe Group, is working to address this. Through SHA and our sister organizations, Partner Africa and Tree Trade, we combine experience in market-based solutions to poverty and rural development, climate change mitigation and resilience, trade facilitation, and farmer and worker rights, all of which is underpinned by an inclusive ethos that specifically targets women and youth. SHA focuses on agriculture and agribusiness as the engine of growth in Africa. And building on our long-standing expertise in supporting smallholder farmers to integrate into agricultural value chains, we're currently managing 2 European Commission funded challenge funds to support up to 90 agribusinesses, the AgriFi Kenya Challenge Fund and the Enterprise Zambia Challenge Fund. As part of these 2 programs, we have established a technical advisory function within both teams and offer high quality expertise to agribusiness. And this includes a specific focus on companies we support on how to adopt a gender lens in business. A couple of practical examples of the practices that we promote with these companies are encouraging both men and women in recruitment panels, something very straightforward, ensuring the employment of men and women in occupations and roles that are not considered to be normally typical for their gender, to prohibit and prevent all forms of violence in the workplace, including verbal, physical, and sexual harassment, and to promote women's leadership. Through our work, we've encountered many remarkable men and women and have decided to use International Women's Day and this year's campaign theme of Choose to Challenge as an opportunity to hear from a number of the women that we work with about their personal and professional journeys that they have encountered or overcome, and the challenges that they're helping others to overcome, and also in turn how they are challenging those around them as they demand the change that is necessary in order to advance women's empowerment and the role of women-led businesses. So at this point, I'd just like to introduce you to our great lineup of speakers, and then we can get into the heart of the discussion. So first up, we'll hear from Sonali Ruparelli, who's Program Manager for Kenya and Uganda at the Rabobank Foundation. Maggie Ngeta, Senior Enterprise Advisor on the AgriFi Challenge Fund, working for Self-Help Africa. Anne-Marie Kathendu, CEO of Picked and Pack and Kathy's Fresh. Kalango Chitengi, General Manager of AgCo Zambia. Winifred Johansson, who's Senior Vice President and Chair of the Board at Quantafuel and also sits on the board of Partner Africa. And our final speaker will be Hilary Barry, who's co-founder of Lady Agri Impact Investment Hub. She'll be joining us a little bit later, so that's why you're not seeing her on the panel right now. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to our first speaker this morning, Sonali Ruparelli, who I said is Programme Manager for Kenya and Uganda at the Rabobank Foundation, where she oversees innovation and financial inclusion, such as capacity building grants for cooperatives and smallholder farmers. Sonali described herself to me as a recovering commercial banker who is passionate about measuring impact and finance solutions that lead to social economic advancement of marginalized communities. So over to you, Sonali. Oh, we have our first on mute of the day.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Orla. Good day, everybody. Thank you again for inviting me for this, and it's a pleasure to be here, especially on this great day. Wishing everybody here, my sisters out there, and on this webinar, a happy Women's Day, and of course, all to the men for the incredible women in their lives. Can I get the presentation? Great. Yeah, so here I am. I work with Rabo Foundation based in Nairobi, and I handle projects in Kenya and Uganda. Next, please. So it's important for us to first just give you an idea of what we are in terms of Rabo Foundation. We are the nonprofit arm of Rabobank, which is a global leader in food and agri-focused lending. And what we engage in is basically benefits lending by way of grants and also, lending by way of loans and also offering capacity building grants for the benefit of smallholder farmers. Next, please. Just a sense of where we are, and we have been in existence since 1974, 45 years in 2019, we had a big celebration. In Africa, we have projects in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia, and Rwanda. And on the west, we've got Senegal, Ivory Coast, and Ghana. We have 7 people in the team, in the African team. So 3 of us are based in Nairobi, whilst 4 of our colleagues are based in the Netherlands, who also manage projects, some in Rwanda and West Africa. We're engaged in various value chains. We also have a training and capacity building focus, whereby we have 2 centers in Uganda and Tanzania, called the ADC and NMB Foundation, which I will also elaborate on after. Our global portfolio as of 2020 will close at about just approximately 50 million euros. And we have grown significantly from the last 12 years, growing almost more than doubled in terms of our number of projects. And yes, 2020 was a lower achievement in terms of because of lack of travels, etc. So, but yeah, 2021 has already kicked off with full force, I must say. Next one, please. So the way we engage with regard to financing for smallholder farmers is looking at impact from looking at power of the 3. We call it the I3 approach, whereby we look at environmental, economic, and social impact leading to sustainable impact as a result with regard to activities for farmers, and with also regarding then having a approach of sustainable financing. Next, please. So we've had a new strategy in 2020 for a 5-year plan with regard to our guiding pillars, and we're focused around climate smart agriculture, reducing post-harvest losses, and reinforcing the value chain. And what we mean by this is engaging in activities focused around, in terms of climate smart agriculture, I could give examples of having climate smart dairy projects. We've gotten into irrigation schemes, looking at fodder in terms of on the dairy side, and also looking at certification from an ecologically and agroforestry approach when it comes to planting. Post-harvest loss is quite a major concern for smallholder farmers. So we've looked at getting into interventions with regard to facilitating and connecting the dots with and financing interventions in such as cooling machines for milk. We look at also financing machines for drying of fruits and vegetables, to give an example. And when it talks about reinforcing the value chain, it's about, excuse me, engaging in working capital and financing solutions, whereby, first of all, yes, it provides a market such that the cooperative benefits from financing to, say, for example, buy milk from farmers. but then also creating a value chain approach for them with regard to from farmer to the end of processor and then eventually to the market. So it's quite an area of connecting the dots in that sense as well. Next, please. So we look at 4 solutions to achieve our overall strategic goals in terms of access to finance and by way of grants and patient loans. Typically in terms of working capital, looking at export finance, we do capacity building grants. Guarantees are something that's we're still now just bringing into Eastern Africa with regard to guaranteeing local commercial banks who we have partnerships with for then on lending for SME portfolios in agriculture. We've got a big focus on connecting the dots with regard to access to networks and knowledge coming from the large Rabobank family and Rabobank exposure, such that we are able to share our experiences and knowledge by way of trainings, by way of connecting to markets, and with various other international NGOs and government institutions as well. We do have also quite a focus on innovative solutions with regard to funding startup projects in agtech and fintech solutions, again, for the benefit, looking at it from a lens of completely on benefit of smallholder farmers, be it maybe quicker payment solutions or looking at quicker payment solutions or looking at even like MFIs having credit scoring systems such that their loan applications from farmers are then able to be turned around quicker. So that's, we actually have an innovation department based in the Netherlands handling all our innovation projects. Next, please. Just to give an example of how we're engaged in various value chains. So we've got projects in coffee in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda. Just an example in terms of, we look at working capital and export financing in coffee value chains. And we've also facilitated grant support with regard to certification for organic or fair trade coffee production. We're also now having a great focus and engaging, just started a project actually on regenerative agriculture, and we're actually holding most likely, still the date to be confirmed, but a roundtable on agroforestry and carbon farming sometime in April. So by way of, in the dairy sector, so we look at financing by way of equipment such as chilling machines, processing yogurt machines, which we've done in Kenya and Tanzania. Cold storage solutions addresses a huge element of post-harvest losses when it comes to farmer produce and also food waste. So we've engaged in drying machines of dried mangoes, dried fruits and vegetables, where they're actually then converted, vegetables which are actually converted into powder and then exported to buyers in the US, which are then used for in food supplements and also in ready meals. Next, please. Just in terms of, we're also engaged in macadamia nuts and cashew nuts, and that's also where it comes in the export financing arrangements, which also then not just provides a guaranteed market for the nuts farmers, but also in terms of additionality as to what the SMEs provide in terms of agronomy support, collection services, and also providing certification in organic in that. We're also engaged in grains and cereals. We have some aggregators in Kenya, also supporting and fostering agricultural technology and farmer practices at the ground level up and up country in rural areas of East Africa. On the tech side, an example here would be a Rwandan MFI, whereby we've supported the development of actually a loan assessment tool, and which they actually go out in the field with the tool and with literally on a phone or an iPad, and they actually able to assess the credit risk and credit rating of farmers on the spot, which actually gives a very quick turnaround, which is crucial for agri-financing. Next, please. Talking about the training centers, so we are, Rabobank is part of a consortium of investors called Arise, through which we are invested in various banks in Africa. So just to give an example, we've got DFCU Bank in Uganda, NMB Bank in Tanzania, we've got Equity Bank in Kenya, Zanaco in Zambia, and BPR in Rwanda, whereby, so we are indirect shareholders through the consortium of investors called Arise. And then we've actually had a focus on training in financial literacy, record keeping, which we find is key for smallholder farmers. And we do that through cooperatives and SACCOs in Uganda by way of an institution called Agribusiness Development Center, which has been co-founded and funded by Rubber Foundation and DFCU. And we've got the NMB Foundation in Tanzania offering a similar training docket. And we've also got some partnerships on the ground with GAIN and AGRA in Tanzania. Next, please. To focus off today in terms of gender lens investing as social lenders, the approach we have taken excuse me, is looking at disaggregated women engagement indicators such that we want to focus on monitoring the impact of women engagement and women empowerment through the life of the project. So just to give you an example. So one of the way we look at how women are engaged with a cooperative is a coffee cooperative in Uganda, whereby it's strictly supported by, rather, the farmer members are strictly only women. So the women do have control in terms of the supply of coffee cherries to the cooperative, who then exports to international markets like in Europe and the US. So that's where we find also in terms of we're able to monitor and measure the impact through the project in terms of number of cooperative members growing, which are purely women. And we see that as a sustainable way of engagement with regard to having women in agriculture. Another indicator we look at is number of staff employed in terms of the gender balance. Excuse me. So we've noticed that in horticulture, like in avocado and mango exporting, we see 70% of staff, 70 to 80% of staff components is often women. And we have a typical SME that's in exports from Kenya that has more than 70% of their staff component being women. So that's another way of then monitoring through the project in terms of how many women are engaged through the life of the project. Number of farmers trained, that's also an additionality in terms of not just providing market, for example, the grains aggregator that we talk about in Kenya. It's not just providing access to market, but also has established a VSLA, which is Village Savings and Loan Associations, where strictly women farmers are engaged by way of, we call them chamas in Kenya, or basically very social, informal. They've actually registered these, it's called a self-help group. So they have a saving and borrowing scheme within the women. And that's been something that's been a great outcome with regard to engaging in this grains aggregator in Kenya. We also have a women-owned, fully women-owned macadamia exporter and processor, and which basically aggregates and trains macadamia farmers, aggregates from them their produce in terms of international markets, and also provides them with support in terms of agronomy and agricultural practices. But also key to note here is macadamia as well. You do often see more women engaged in that value chain. Next, please. So, I mean, the challenges that we have encountered in agribusiness and what we see on the ground, especially as farmers on the ground and small scale SMEs and trying to develop, is access to finance. A lot to do with access, basically the ownership of assets is very often not in the name of the woman, it's name of the man. Even typically like land, buildings, even the M-Pesa account, for example, is in the name of the woman, sorry, in the name of the man. And hence that does form a challenge for women on the ground in terms of accessing loans due to lack of collateral. We do see wage gaps between men and women, especially at full-time employment. Casual labor is actually at a standard daily rate, but we've noticed and actually experienced that the full-time employment rates in agri-SMEs especially have a big disparity with regard to in the gap between men and women. By virtue, yes, unfortunately, women don't speak and seek for that clarification at farmer level as well. When we're doing trainings, we do see that hesitation and of speaking and asking questions. And that's something we're trying to, I'll come to in terms of opportunities. And yeah, we look at, again, at cooperative level, when we go for our field meetings, the gender biases that you see against women, even in the board setup, in board meetings as well, is very evident. Of course, we have had quite a challenging 2020, and hopefully 21 is improving now with regard to the impact on women. Women have borne the bigger brunt of the pandemic globally, and especially at farmer level in terms of the way they've been affected is disrupted markets and access to markets and processing, which has of course had a direct impact and reduced on their incomes. with increased responsibilities of children being at home, less time available to focus on agricultural activities or even taking it to the market. We were talking savings groups at the SLAs where, yeah, that's also been quite a hindrance because the number of, in terms of the savings contributions went down, but also regarding the meetings, etc., to discuss, and they have a internal loan management system, which has also been suspended last year due to lockdowns and inability to meet face-to-face. Next, please. Where do we see in terms of opportunities also as social lenders like ourselves? With regard to women not having access to assets in their name, there is, as social lenders like ourselves, we do offer cash flow financing based on contracts and not necessarily on hardcore collateral like land and buildings and cars, etc. And we're also, through our training centers, providing that support in terms of mentoring and coaching for women to be able to then to empower themselves and basically speak out. I think that's one other thing that women also hesitate, I've seen on the ground with regard to female farmers, is that partnerships and joining hands is something that can be very, very beneficial, and we cannot be in more than one place at a time. And that's something that's definitely beneficial we've seen on the ground. Yeah, addressing these stereotypes, engaging what we're doing in terms of another indicator is then having, there may be a male-owned company or the board level at cooperative might be fully male, but engage women at various levels and looking at impact indicators then through the project, especially in cooperatives, looking at what number of women are engaged at various levels in the staff component at cooperatives. Looking at the regulatory side of things in terms of the equal pay matter, that's something that we're actually engaging through, especially on the dairy side, though there are fewer women in dairy, but also the HCD, which is the Horticulture Development Authority, with regard to having a standard full-time salary approach with regard to agri-SMEs and not having such a large gap, or rather any gap between men and women's salaries. However, the casual daily approach is the same. Next, please. This is a study I'd like to share, or rather it's an extract from a presentation from the Mercy Corps AgriFin Accelerate event that took place in December 2019. This is something I find that has really driven us or drives social lenders like ourselves in terms of what next in terms of engaging and empowering women in agriculture. And this forms quite a great basis for us because it basically highlights that women's mechanism of finance and saving is very emergency and working liquidity based rather than planning for a future activity like, say, buying a house or a machine. So their need for funding emergencies and immediate needs is basically a focus, and that's why their savings and loan practices also reflect from that. It's basically looking at saving to survive and not necessarily saving for growth and not a driver for growth. And that's something we're really looking at in our strategy looking at all our pillars as to how to address these. It's actually a research based on an engagement of more than 50,000 farmers by 2019. This is a 5-year project by Mercy Corps. And this is a learning that they had shared. This is based on evaluating more than 50,000 female farmers. And this is what they have actually shared. And it's actually very provoking and definitely food for a lot of strategic thought for us as social lenders and Rubber Foundation, which is focused on agricultural financing and looking at how to then become engaging women at all levels in agriculture, all through the value chains and in all areas in terms of the regions. So basically, we do operate not just in Africa, but we have projects in Asia and in Latin America as well, and with our head office being in the Netherlands. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you again to Self-Help Africa for this invitation, and I'm looking forward to and hearing what my fellow panelists have to share and learn and engage further. Thank you so much. I hope I kept my time.
A little bit over, but it was interesting, so we'll let you out of it.
Thank you.
No, thanks, Anali. That was interesting. There's some questions coming through on the Q&A panel, and I have one also. in terms of, we often see crops that are male crops because they're considered high value, and you gave two examples, one of coffee and macadamia, which can be very male dominated, given that they're cash crops in some countries. So do you see much of a difference in terms of the crops that women are getting?
So coffee, I notice in Kenya, I think it's a lot to do with our fragmented, unfortunately, Kenyan, it's, I have to say, but it's a fragmented value chain in terms of several stakeholders in between, from farmer to actual, finally, the auction house and exports in the international market. As a result, a farmer that supplies to a cooperative can often be paid a full payment after 10 months. And I find that that's possibly a hindrance for women engagement in coffee in Kenya compared to, for example, Rwanda and Uganda, where we see a lot more women engaged, not just on the field, but even at corp level in coffee cooperatives, because the value chain is much shorter with regard to them exporting directly to international markets. So they're actually paid. So by the time a farmer is actually supplying to a cooperative, and by the time they're paid, is generally about 60 to 75 days, whereas in Kenya, the initial payment might be a very marginal payment at time of delivery. However, the full payment only comes after 9 to 10 months, which is the cycle of the system of the auction house that cooperatives follow, marketers, etc. And I find that is something, and going back to the point of the research learning in terms of women having the immediate funding need, rather than having a longer term growth approach. And I find that's why women in Kenya are not so much engaged in coffee compared to Rwanda and Uganda, whereas that's evidently seen in those two countries. Again, horticulture as well, that's a quicker value chain. Horticulture, definitely more women on the ground, even in SMEs as well.
I mean, the 10-month payment period is difficult for anybody. But particularly so when people are particularly cash constrained. Thanks, Sonalia. I better move over to Maggie Ngeta, our second speaker. There'll be more opportunity for Q&A.
Thank you, Orla.
At the end of the session. Thanks. So handing over now to Maggie Ngeta, who's Senior Business Advisor for Self-Help Africa on the EU-backed AgriFi Kenya Challenge Fund, currently providing 18 million euros in financing to promote agribusiness growth and expansion. Maggie's going to be making the case as to why investing in women is good for everybody, as well as the right thing to do. So over to you, Maggie.
Thanks, Orla. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here. My experience and some of the lessons that we have learned having worked over the years with agri enterprises. Could I ask that you share my presentation, please? Thank you. So today I'm here to make a case, or to submit to everyone, that it is important that we continue investing in women. And I want to start my illustration with a picture that you can see on my slide. These are some women from the northern part of Kenya who come from pastoralist communities. And what they are doing, they are gum collectors and they are sorting gum. Now, in the northern part of Kenya, a lot of the economic activity, it's mainly pastoralism, and the cattle belong to the men. And so the men will move from one place to the other in search of pasture and water. And so this opportunity provides an alternative source of income for the women. As Orla has just mentioned, we are working to provide some funding to agri-enterprises across all the counties in Kenya. And out of them, we are not only looking at providing funds, we are providing funds so that they can be able to unlock additional private sector investments for those businesses. But we are looking at businesses that are able to integrate smallholder farmers better so that they are able to increase their income. And in the program, we are very intentional, even as we look at who we are going to fund, on how are the businesses planning to include more women as smallholder farmers, include them in their management, include them as members of staff. And so even as we evaluate the proposals that are submitted to us, then we ensure that the business we already have that conversation with them, that it is important to invest and to have more women into their businesses. Next slide, please. So this slide, I'm initially looking at the constraints or the challenges or the hindrances that women entrepreneurs go through, not only in Kenya, but in Africa at large. And I have moved this from, or I've gotten this from a study or a report that was done by World Bank. On the report is Profiting from Parity, Unlocking the Potential of Women Agribusinesses in Africa. And the report just looks at, yes, for us, there are opportunities for women, but what are the main constraints that make women not be able to get into full potential as their male counterparts? Now, we know that in Africa, a lot of women or a lot of people have been driven into entrepreneurship, sometimes not because out of choice, but because there are limited opportunities for formal employment, and so a lot of them get into businesses. So a huge percentage of those businesses that are started by women are very small and do not grow to the level that would really want them to grow. And I just want, because today is the day that we are celebrating the women in business and also women in leadership, to talk to us women and say, what kind of decisions then do we make, or what are some of these things that hinder us from getting to that level of businesses that our male counterparts are able to do so. Number one is a sector that we find a lot of women in. A lot of women who are in business, we find them in retail and maybe in hospitality. And this could be the kind of decisions they make is because of not maybe education, not because of maybe capital, but mainly because of the social factors. So whereas there are constraints around education, but you look at who is their role model. So if a woman has a male as a role model, then there's a high likelihood that they are going to invest in male-dominated businesses. If the social factors that come into play and the role models are mainly women, then you find that women get into businesses that are crowded by other women. So the other difference, or the other decision that women make, comes around access to capital and labor, and Sonali has just mentioned this, so I just don't want to say much about it, but we are aware that women do not have, or systemically, they have not had the same capital levels as men have had, and also in terms of job opportunities and labor, there are some male-dominated careers, whereas women are getting into the lower level. Again, it is decisions that maybe as women will take or make. So, but some studies that have been done and data has shown that in terms of investments, male-owned businesses have been invested 6 times more than women. And also in terms of labor, it's slightly lower. Then we look at the differences or decisions that women make in terms of the business practices. Also, again, research has shown that women or men are able or normally take up some, adopt better business practices as compared to women. But then again, we are looking at the willingness to compete, and that's the one that I would really want to look at. So as a woman, then we are in a field where it is a world where we'll always have men and women, but maybe because of the way we have been socialized, especially as an African girl and within our African continent, then you find that we do not have, or we are not as competitive as men are. And therefore the challenge that I'm throwing today to the women, those in the panelists and the ones that are listening, is do the women have the same capability and capacity to compete? Now, there was an experiment that was done in Kenya, and it was found that women are less than half likely to compete as compared to men. So the opportunities are there, but then this is very more intrinsic. And so women need to make a decision that for us to make it, as for us to be able to seize the opportunities the same as men, then we need to ensure that we have that willingness to compete in the same space. Then, of course, as I move on to the other slides, then it means that we have a lot of agenda gap because of some underlying challenges, and Sonali has just mentioned them. And this could be issues around access to finance, the social norms, the availability of time. And this is something I want to talk about, that whereas men spend more time in their businesses as compared to women. So research shows that men spend 10% more time in their businesses as compared to the women, because women have other domestic and household tasks that they need to do. So if that cumulatively, it contributes to a lot. And so men can be able to have more time, so they're able to sort out their business challenges. They are more keen on running the business. And that could explain one of the reasons why men are able to build maybe stronger businesses than what women would be able to build. So next slide, please. So based on that, from an organization and from a program perspective, we believe that there's a business case for investing in women. And the business case is because of three things: that investing in business is good for the economy, it is good for people who want to invest, and it is also good for the business. Now, the World Bank projects that if we invest in women and we ensure that we try and bridge the gap in between the men and women, that sub-Saharan Africa GDP would increase to 570 billion by the year 2025. That would be 12% above what can be achieved if nothing happens. So that means as organizations from both private sector, the government, and the development space, then we need to ensure that we bridge the gap to make sure that women are able to access and they have the information to be able to know where are those opportunities and how can we be able to support them so that they're able to contribute to the economy. Next slide, please. Now, if we are going to look at bringing on board more women, it is really good for business, and we are investing in agri-businesses. We are targeting 50, so far we have contracted 30. And one of the things that we are doing is to ensure that we start the gender conversation and ensure that the businesses are aware that there is value in investing in women. Now, we invest in agri-businesses, and when we interact with the business owners, especially the ones that will do, they do processing, you will find that they have a big chunk of women, especially on where there's packing happening or where sorting is happening, because they say that women are very keen to detail and they want to ensure that the product quality is good. So research has shown that for companies that have more women in their board, then there's an increase by 6% of their margins. But it's also important to say that when you have both women and men within your teams, you're able to have a good reflection on the product and services that are good for the business. Now, I'll give this analogy, that it is important to have different perspectives. If we all went to the same school, are from the same country, are from the same continent, or are from the same place, and then we start a business, there is a high likelihood that we will think the same and we'll make the same mistakes. So if you want diversity, it is important to look at, do I have diversity in my board? Do I have diversity in the management? And do I even have diversity in the smallholder farmers that we are sourcing from? Next slide, please. Now, it's also said that, and I'd mentioned that when we invest in women, it is good for investing. So from the investor's perspective, a study was done for COVID impact investors by one of the professors from Harvard University. And the conclusion that they came up with was there's actually a difference for companies or from impact investors that have women in leadership, then their return of investment was 8.6%. And where they did not have, it was at 4.4%. Now, it is also, there's evidence that where there's a partner in the fund, then you find that the financial returns are 10% better. So the numbers speak for themselves, and I could go on and on and on, but I think what I can say, next slide, please. What I can say that bringing all this thing, if it is important for us to, or if this is what investing in women is all about, then we can agree that just investing in women at whatever level it is just the right thing to do. So the next slide, please. So as a program, how are we approaching it and what are we doing? So when we bring on board private sector companies, which are agribusinesses, we start them by, when they're doing their proposals, they define, this is how we are going to integrate women, both at the smallholder level, at the directorship level and in their staffing levels. So what we do, we carry out or we conduct an analysis to check how gender inclusive the businesses are, and we rate those businesses. Now, when we rate them, we find that there are some who are gender aware, there are those ones who are gender proactive, and there are those ones who are almost nearing to being very gender inclusive. But then, because we have identified the gap, then we ask ourselves, how do we help them to be able to ensure that they bring more women on the decision-making table, more women in their sourcing or in their outgrown models. So we do what is called the bottom-up approach. So we provide technical assistance to the agribusinesses. And the way we do it is while we are sorting out the business problems, then we normally apply a gender lens. So we're not going and telling them, you are not at 30% threshold constitutionally if you're in Kenya and you're working with a cooperative, but we are looking at what is the current business challenge? Is the current business challenge around marketing or product development? Now, as we sort it out, then we support them to see how can we be able to apply a gender lens. Now, we also, as we do our technical assistance, we encourage them to invest and to have that diversity and be very intentional so that the product and services that they do provide to either their customers or the smallholder farmers for our case, then they actually are very intentional and they meet the specific needs for both men and women. For example, if we are looking at bringing and integrating more farmers into their value chains and into their outgrower schemes, then we look at what are the challenges that make more women not get into the value chains? What are the challenges that are making more women not be able to attend trainings? And out of it, we see, can we be able to sort it, be very intentional by providing and sorting out and ensuring that the women who they are targeting, either at the smallholder level, are able to supply more. If they are not able to get to the quantities that they needed to, can they be able to form a group so that women can be able to aggregate together? Can they be able to lobby for them in case there are issues around the rights for land and things like that? And that way then, we are slowly by slowly trying to bridge the gap through the private sector or the agribusinesses that we are working with to ensure that they are able to bridge the gap. And we are bridging the gap at 3 levels, at the smallholder level, at the employee level, to ensure that how are the promotions, how are the recruitments done, and also at the senior management level. Just sharing the business case, it is important and it is okay for us to find, it is important to have women at the decision-making table. Now, one last example, in one of the cooperatives that we work with, a dairy cooperative, normally for women to get into the management committee, it goes through an election. And women need to campaign and they need to really sell and tell the other farmers to vote for them. And a lot of women shy away to want to be elected. And so the cooperative is very intentional. They normally reach out to them and tell them, I think you can make it. Of course, they cannot influence, but they encourage them to apply so that they are able to get into the decision-making table. Next slide, please. So as I end my presentation, and this is a target to, or I'm talking to the fellow women here and the ones who are not represented here, I just want to give this quote by Marva Collins, that success doesn't come to you and success doesn't come to us as women. We need to go for it. So thank you very much. I'm open for questions.
Thank you very much, Maggie. And we'll be seeing some of our follow-on speakers that they did indeed go for it. And a focus of what Lady Agri do as well is about trying to encourage women to promote themselves and step away from the collective. Just a quick question for you before we move on to Anne-Marie. In terms of the Challenge Fund, and we set working with companies and designing programs, how do we ensure that the commitment to gender inclusion goes beyond the project that might be being funded through the Challenge Fund and is an integral part of their business?
Thanks, Orla. That's a good question. So there are three things actually. One, it is practice. So I said we are supporting them with technical assistance, and we use a bottom-up approach where we apply a gender lens on all their challenges. So as we work with them, they practice one challenge after the other. So by the time we are working with them for 24 months and others 30 months, by the time we graduate them, or by the time we get to the end of the project, they have practiced and have seen value, why it is important to apply a gender lens. The second one, we are also working with the apex bodies. And so through some of these things can only be sorted at the policy level. So these SMEs are members of apex bodies. So we work with them to ensure that in case there are any gender issues, then they are sorted at that level. The final one is the business owners and entrepreneurs must and need to be intentional. That then they can be able to run with it post the project.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sylvia, I see you put Sylvia, sorry, I think that hopefully that answers some of your question. We can come back to that at the Q&A at the end. Thank you very much, Maggie. So now I'll hand over to Anne-Marie Kafendu, who is CEO of Picked and Packed Fresh Produce Kenya and Kathy's Fresh Limited, agri-tech businesses that buy and sell fresh produce from more than 1,200 small-scale farmers in Kenya. Anne-Marie and her sister Nancy both worked as management consultants in Europe for many years and made the move back to Kenya about 6 or 7 years ago to start up the two companies. So Anne-Marie will talk us through starting her own business from scratch and how it is to be a woman in a patriarchal rural setting. So welcome, Anne-Marie, and over to you.
Thank you, Orla. Thank you. Well, as she said, well, thank you for the slides. Yeah. Okay. Yes. My name is Anne-Marie. My sister and I left Europe and started PNP in 2012. So we've got what we call the PNP group, and that comprises two companies. We've got Picked and Packed, which is really more your farm to shelf company that we supply on a wholesale basis fresh produce, fruit and vegetables to supermarkets and big grocers, whereas Kathy's Fresh is more farm to fork. We sell directly to the end consumers, and PNP is one of the suppliers to Kathy's Fresh, and this is this is farm to fork. And between the two companies, we've got in 2020 we had turnover of about 400 million. Next slide. In both companies, we actually own and manage the end-to-end value chain, right from farms, our own farm, and contract farmers. As Orla said, we have just under 2,000 farmers, and all the way to the logistics, the supply chain, all the way. We control the entire value chain from end to end. And next slide. So that having been said, it was not an easy journey. Honestly, it wasn't. And I'm glad no one told us how challenging it would be, because probably would still be in Europe. We had two challenges. We had a challenge, first of all, of just starting a company from scratch that anyone, I believe, would face. And then there was the specific challenge of starting a company in a rural setting that is quite patriarchal. So first of all, I'll address the challenges of just starting a company. Nancy and I were in London, and when we decided we were going to do this, and we sat down and we drew beautiful corporate plans and processes and KPIs and end-to-end process flows. I mean, both of us were in management consulting, both of us had done MBAs. We come to Kenya, and the first thing that we realized is the reality was very different from what we had planned. There are quite a lot of things they don't teach you in business school. What they teach you in business school is what well-established companies do with structures and how you can do that. Whereas here, we were doing it from scratch. The other thing that was a challenge is that since both of us were not in the agricultural sector, Nancy was in management consulting in the finance sector, and she's an engineer by background. And my background is finance, and I was my focus was management consulting for oil and gas companies. You can see that is as far removed as possible from farming. So we had a really steep learning curve. We had to put in our 10,000 hours. And we went about this in a very systematic manner. We would ask several experts on what to do. We'd do our own research. And then based on that, we'd have a very scientific approach as to what we'd try out, what we do in a pilot. And once we finished with that, we're like, this works. And sometimes what worked and what was normally done was different. And when you tell people, this is how we want things done, we've tried it, we've done a pilot on our farm, this works. And people look at us and say, this is Kenya. You're Mzungus, you've come from abroad, you're foreigners. This is not how things are done in Kenya. In Kenya, things are done differently. Luckily enough, we're tenacious and we stuck to our guns. And as a result, we ended up being disrupted in certain things. So for instance, we introduced post-harvest handling practices, which reduce post-harvest losses from the norm of around 25% to 30%, which was shocked to find locally. Where we are today, where our post-harvest loss is 2 to 5%. We introduced a cool chain, end-to-end. And I never forget the first time when people saw us washing bananas in the field, and we had a whole range of people coming and staring at us and saying, what are you doing? We don't do that. We don't wash bananas. The other challenge was attracting good employees. We were an unknown factor. No one wanted to work with us. Our initial employees were almost like marking time, working with us while waiting to find a job with unknown brands. We also had to be multi-skilled because between my sister and I, we held the entire portfolio. Nancy was the CEO, the farm manager, and was focusing on our strategy. I focused on finance, HR, and sales. But between the two of us, we had to be multi-skilled. And then the biggest challenge was around access to finance. You know what Sonali did, I wrote on slide 11, on our slide 11, I was like, yes, we experienced all of that. First of all, no one wanted to give us any financing. They did not think we were serious. We were seen to be almost tourists. And we were women to boot, and women that had been out of the country for a long time. So we were not seen to be serious players. For us, the saving grace is that the two of us had savings, and that is what helped us in the beginning. And the first couple of years, we needed a lot of financing as we went through our steep learning curve, and we made a lot of mistakes. But I'll give you an example. Like, for instance, when we decided we were going to buy our first truck, and this was asset-based financing, the banks that we were working with not only required joint registration for the vehicle, not only a significant deposit put for the vehicle, but they required our parents to co-sign for us. We provided warranties, and we provided a lot of collateral that was 4 to 5 times the value of that truck. And when we look around and we saw men that had come back and were starting business, they were not required to do as much. All that was required was joint registration. Those are the challenges we faced as just starting a company. But then my sister and I faced other challenges. Next slide, please. And these challenges were really because we were women. Not only were we were women starting a business in rural Kenya, in Meru County, which is a very patriarchal society, and in a sector that that is quite patriarchal because land is owned by men. The revenue from the land is actually kept by men. So there were specific challenges that we faced. And I've summed these as challenges of really, we were not seen or heard. Initially it was comical and then it ceased to be comical. So, I mean, the first one is people would walk into our office and would ask, what are the people? What are the people? And we realized the men, where are the men? Dealing with local authorities, dealing with suppliers, dealing with customers. We were not being heard, and we had to drag our poor brothers and our dad everywhere. So they would be physically there and then we do all the speaking. Because without a man there, we were not being heard. We were also seen as not really doing this seriously. What was wrong with us? We were well educated. We had worked in Europe for 20 odd years. What were we doing? I remember my sister and I once came home and we found the local pastor, my mother, quite a number of our relatives, some of the local authorities and our cousins, and they were carrying out an intervention. We're being told, get jobs. What are you doing? You're the two most educated women in this village. What are you doing? This family is not for you. Then there's a challenge that we got as women bosses. Not only are we getting challenged from the local authorities, we're getting challenged from our own employees. I remember particularly our drivers. They felt that as drivers of trucks and pickups, they would tell us what needed to be done. Whereas we had a very clear vision of some of the things that we needed done. And we went through 42 drivers. We kept a track of these before we got the first driver that wanted to work the way we wanted to work. They would challenge us. And again, we said, no, we've driven vehicles. This is not done here. And you may ask, what was this that we were requiring that made us go through 42 drivers? And it was a very simple thing, what we call the daily vehicle inspection checklist. We needed our drivers before they start the journey every day to do an inspection of the vehicle to make sure that it's safe, not only for employees, but to carry produce and it will not be a police magnet. We also had a preventative maintenance schedule for all our vehicles. And the drivers struggled with this because this was not the norm. And we were women. What did we know about cars? They would be quite patronizing. And yet someone like my sister actually knows pretty much a lot about vehicles because for quite a long time in her life, she was involved in motor racing. One of the challenges that we also faced is because from the beginning we had a gender bias. We would, all things being equal, would employ women. We would be biased towards women empowerment, and at any point in time we have around 70% women working for us. Currently it's around 67%. But by doing that, it was seen to be a disruptor to the social norms, especially in rural Kenya. And one of the things that we did was a very simple thing. We called women by their names and we paid directly to their M-Pesa accounts in their names or to their bank accounts. We did not realize at the time how much disruptive this would be. But we'll go to a woman and say, what is your name? And she'll say, well, I am Mrs. Eric Njoroge. We're like, no, that's your husband's name. What is your name? Say, I am Mama Wamboi. No, that's who you're a mother of. What is your name? And I made a simple rule where like all everyone should be called by their names. I don't want to call anyone as daughter of, husband of, wife of, because we don't do that with men. It's like everyone will be called by their name. And equal work, equal pay. All the men and all the women would be paid the same. And we changed our processes such that there wasn't a specific task that would have a gender bias. Everything we did, the way we laid out the work, a man or a woman could do that. And one of the things that we noticed quickly is that there was a sudden rise in gender-based violence against our women. So end of month would find women coming with black eyes, some beaten, and it got to a point where we had to engage what is called the local council of elders to speak to the men, both as an initiative in the local community, where we ensured even people that are not employees, men that are not employees, were included, but to ensure that specifically their husbands to employees were included, and our employees were included, in order to tell them that actually violence against women was unacceptable. And we also faced threats. We were threatened. One day, my sister and I, we found outside our gate a group of husbands of our employees coming and threatening us, saying we are empowering the women too much. They're becoming big-headed. We are encouraging divorce in the local community. So that was an interesting phase, and this really happened in the first few years. Then, as I've shared with you, it was just the old finance companies requiring a whole more security. Getting financing was difficult. And had we not been having our finance and being able to fund ourselves such that we did not require external financing for the first few years, it would have been a real challenge, especially given that what was happening in the local economy. You had the elections. You also had the retail sector going through a lot of turmoil. You had your big supermarket chains collapsing one after the other, and those are our main customers. So all of these challenges we faced, particularly in the first 5 years, and I'm happy to say we're no longer facing these challenges. Next slide. So now, actually, this is the irony. No, sorry. We are now seen to be an employer of choice. But here's the interesting thing. Both my sister and I are seen as men. You find that the compliment, people think that trainers are compliments. Yeah, you think like a man, I can work with you. We are treated as men. You hear compliments like, you're like a man, you're like 1.5 men, or you are like 2 men. And we've gone through that phase of having challenges as women, now no longer being seen, no longer facing those challenges. But here is where the rub is, being seen as men. And my hope is that one day when someone is paying us a compliment, they don't say, oh, you're like 2 men. They're like you are a powerful woman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. Yes, that's a compliment and a half in there. Thank you for sharing that kind of personal journey and kind of the sacrifices that you made on your physical safety as well at times, in terms of the challenges that you encountered. And you were saying if you'd known what was lying ahead of you, you don't know if you would have done it, but having successfully come through kind of all of those different challenges, what would be the advice that you would give to a woman or women trying to set up their own company in similar circumstances?
And thank you. I mean, what I say, had we known what we were going to face, as I said, it would have had second thoughts. So I have to emphasize that had we started the business like in Nairobi or in a different sector that was not so patriarchal, the challenges would have faced would have been less, as opposed to being in rural patriarchal society. But the one thing that I would say to women is don't give up. Be tenacious. Yes, you may not be seen or heard, but there are enough people that encourage you. And for me, I was very lucky that I was going through this journey with my sister. So we were able to support each other. I would encourage women to get mentors. Talk to someone that has gone through the same journey, so they can share their stories. Because when I talk to other women, I find that actually my journey is not unique. My sister's journey is not unique. It may have had some more challenges being in rural Kenya, but it is not unique. As Sonali was sharing, these are some of the things that she sees with the women that she works with. But getting a mentor, getting somebody to do almost like a sanity check that actually you are on the right track. And what I like about South of Africa is that they are helping women along on this journey. They are helping other entrepreneurs see that actually empowering women is great. But we need women to be supported more. And right now we're finding the more finance companies that are taking us, they're asking a question, saying, well, you're a woman entrepreneur. Actually, I will be biased towards you as opposed to biased against you. I think things are getting easier, but that support, that mentorship is all important.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. And a comment coming through from Clarice saying a very inspiring story and kind of very practical experience for women in business. So we'll move on next now to Kalango Chitengi. Delighted to introduce an old friend. Kalango was SHA's first female country director, and our loss proved to be AGCO's gain when she moved to a new role 2 years ago to AGCO Corporation as first a senior manager for the Future Farm, and has recently been promoted to general manager for AGCO Corporation Zambia, one of the world's largest manufacturers and distributors of agricultural equipment and machinery. And so a lot of speakers have gone corporate the other direction. Kalango's taken the leap in the opposite direction, so is here to talk to us about her experiences. Thanks, Kalango.
Thank you, Orla, and thank you for inviting me. And hello to all my fellow speakers and everyone listening. Firstly, I would just like to give a context to what I'm going to be talking about. And the context is that mechanization in sub-Saharan Africa is taking a long time to take root. So we still find that most of our agriculture is by the hoe. So I think that we are still struggling with the drudgery of the hoe. And this drudgery really impacts women the most. So just a few quick figures. So in South Asia, for instance, agricultural mechanization is now at about 40% plus. In Latin America and the Caribbean is rising up to about 60%. In East Asia, they're just going over the 20% mark. And in Sub-Saharan Africa, and especially in Zambia, we're still at about 11%. So that shows you that we are still really, depending on human power to farm. And I think we all know that using human power to farm, if you compound that with the fact that we depend on rain-fed agriculture, our irrigation systems are still very underdeveloped, and also that we have other challenges like power supply, road networks are poor. All these things put together really makes agriculture in sub-Saharan Africa very difficult, especially for countries like Zambia, who have to feed a growing population, but then cannot be very productive because of very low tech or no technology at all in most cases. And I think the other important thing I would like to talk about already is the fact that for Zambia, 55%, 60% of our populations are still in rural areas. And in that 65%, we know that about 55%, 55.9% are women. And we know that 75% of most of our rural-based agriculture is done by women. So we know that the responsibility of food production in rural areas and sub-rural areas in Zambia and most of Africa is done by women. And I think that's a challenge that I would like to talk about today. With the background of poor mechanization, women doing most of the work, how does that mean and what is the impact for women? And when we talk about empowering women and bringing women to the fore and bringing women into leadership, how can we do that if they have this huge burden that they carry on their backs? So why agriculture even? I think that we all know that agriculture, it really is the main livelihood for most rural communities. And in Zambia, it's not just for rural communities, but even those living in sub-rural and peri-urban communities, they depend on agriculture for their livelihood. And this is not just for markets, but it's also to grow their own food. So agriculture is really the single most important sector for the population in my country, Zambia. And we also know that it also then affects other sectors. So agribusiness, you need to have a strong agriculture sector, a strong productive sector to support agribusiness. You need to have a strong agriculture sector to support sectors like, now we have the food blends, you have beer producers depend on cassava, they depend on millet. So a lot of things really, at the end of the day, are affected by agriculture, including the clothes that we wear. You need to have a strong cotton growing sector in order for you to have affordable clothing. Otherwise, you end up importing all your cottons and clothing from elsewhere. So women are really then at the center of agriculture, both in terms of production and also in terms of food security, and also in terms of ensuring that there is enough food in the household to feed school-going children. Because at the end of the day, we want to have our children happy and healthy in order for them to perform better in school. So it's really something that is at the center of our livelihoods and at the center of our lives. So women are in charge of agriculture production, in terms of land preparation. They plant, they maintain the crop, they harvest, they will pack in whatever format they do that. But then we know that when it comes to then going to the market and when it comes to negotiating for the crop, they are then cut out of the cycle. So already there, they have lost that opportunity to benefit from, the sales, to benefit from the discussions, and also to have their voice in how that crop will be sold. And sometimes we also see that there's also a lack of negotiation of how much food remains in the household. Because I know that women also want to make sure that they have enough food in the household store so they can feed their children, but they can also then sell some to the market so they can buy the uniforms, the shoes for their children and books, and also other household requirements. So if they're cut out of at that point where they should be sitting around with the buyers or going to markets, then it means that they've already lost 60% of the battle. So the men then take over, they'll take the crop to the market, and while they're there, they make their own decision as to what that money should go into. And it's not common to see, even here at my own residence. I live on a farm. I've allowed my workers to grow some stuff behind their yards, and when they do, I can see their wives and their daughters get involved a lot at a certain stage. And then for 3 days, I don't see him, and I'm told he's gone to the market, he's going to sell the maize or sell the vegetables, and then he comes back with a new bicycle. And then there's a problem, and then I have to mediate, because he makes that decision on his own that, all this crop that I've taken to the market where everyone is involved, I am now going to buy a bicycle, and it's my bicycle and nobody else can use it. And when you spread that, across most households, that is the case. The decision on how that money is spent is made by one person, but the effort to grow that crop involves a lot of other people, and it's normally the women and the girls and even the sons in that home state. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have, and where mechanization could play a role in actually reducing some of the time that the women put into tillage, put into some of the activities that go on in the field. But we also know that mechanization is not an easy thing in terms of cost. Who can afford a tractor really? Who can afford even small implements? Like sprayers, planters, and things like that. They are all very expensive, and most households and most families can't afford to buy those implements and that kind of equipment. So the women then still continue to be tied to the hoe and tied to the very back-breaking work that they need to do in the field. But unfortunately, this then becomes, it sort of creates a cycle, that a never-ending cycle. Because when you have to depend on the hoe and you have to depend on back-breaking manual work, then you have to bring in the children. So the girls especially have to help with the tillage or with the cultivation activities in the field, but they also then have to go home and help also with carrying water, carrying firewood, looking after the younger siblings. And then what happens is that it's a choice. Should the girl child go to school, or should she stay home and help with the household chore? And then again, culturally, we also have the cultural issues of, don't send the girl to school because she's going to get married in future. Rather invest in the son. So a lot of things are then stacked up against the girl. She has to do all this work. If the mother is strong enough to insist that the girl child goes to school, it is then as a punishment, or because she's going to school, then when she comes back, she must do all these chores. She must pay for the opportunity to go to school. And that then already the girl child is losing opportunity, equal opportunity to go to school, get educated, get empowered. So then she goes through that cycle again, and then later on becomes a disadvantaged woman who then has to depend, on the men folk in her family or on her husband, and it's the same thing again. So she wants to own land, but she can cultivate land for the family. She has no say in how that produce is used, and ultimately she then raises daughters that she has to raise them like she was raised herself, put them to the labor force, and the cycle continues. And that then reduces the number of women that can actually grow to become strong women, educated women, exposed women. And I'm always telling my own nieces and daughters here that, look, in Africa, we're still at a level where education is the most simple and best way to get ahead. I think that no matter how many songs you sing here, you're not going to make millions like Beyonce, or no matter how many videos you make here. So for us here, even your artistic talents still can't get you very far. There's very, very few people who survive on that. You still need to get an education. And if you don't, already you've lost the battle of getting empowered and actually achieving a better life for yourself. So I think for mechanization, I think it's not something that can be done by one sector alone. I think that it has to be a multi-sectorial approach. We need government, we need civil society, we need all these bilateral programs and projects to come together and see how can we mechanize agriculture in Africa, and particularly how do we ensure that women have access to this. So one of the things we're doing at ACO and at the ACO Future Farm Learning and Training Center is to actually we've developed some training programs already in agronomy that are easily understood by women. So we actually translate some of these programs in the local languages so that women can already begin to understand the basics of agronomy, how to grow their maize better, what to use, what kind of fertilizers to use. And we try and do this in the language that they can understand, because we also know that a lot of times women are intimidated by going into a forum, a classroom where the main language of communication is English. The English is not very good. Already they're intimidated, even maybe by the presence of men in that classroom. Sometimes even when the woman has said, I would like to attend this program, then she can't come because the man behind her says, look, why do you want to go there? You just want to go and misbehave. What learning do you need to do? You've always farmed this way. Why do you want to change? So there's all these challenges that women face, but we try and really simplify our programs so that women can also, learn some things, learn some basic things to improve their agronomical practices and improve their productivity. And because we also understand that in order for someone to afford anything for the farm, they need to make some money out of it. It's from their profits that they can buy, even a simple sprayer. It has to come it has to be from the profit of that business venture. So we also have a lot of farming as a business programs where we teach women on how they can cost their productivity, compare prices, and we also encourage them to go out on their own. We even go as far as bringing those partners onto the future farm so that the women know that if they want to get fertilizer, there's this company and there's that company. For instance, on the farm, we have Syngenta, we have Sitco. Those are all companies that we've partnered with so that they can give information and support to our women participants right on site. They don't have to go to other places, but they can find everything within our training center. The other thing we've also done is to, at ACO global level, was to, produce a tractor, what we call the Global Series. It's a tractor really designed for, for our African terrain, much simpler to use. It has some steps, easy for women to get onto it, and also very easy to use. We already have about 1 or 2 females within the future farm who can operate that tractor. And we've done that deliberately so that when our women participants come, they can actually see another woman operating a tractor, because we tend to think that, a tractor can only be driven by a man. But if they can see a woman on the tractor and doing what, the tractor can do properly, we think that it will actually give them that encouragement. And our tractor operators, actually the female, they're not degree holders or highly educated. They're tradespeople, so people can relate to them as well, because we don't want people to come and say, oh no, but they've got a degree in this and that. That's how come they can drive a tractor or operate a tractor, but they are, just medium level trade level, and they're able to do that. I think the other thing we've also tried to do is to actually go into the farms, go to the women's households and conduct the trainings in their communities, community setup. Sometimes we've been told women can't come because they can't afford the transport to come to the training center, or they can't get away because the husband says you can't go very far away, who's going to look after the children, and they make it difficult for them to move away from the household. So we actually we do what we call the training roadshows. We carry everything. We carry our generator, we carry our tractor, we carry everything that we need to do the training, and we hire a classroom. Most rural communities have classrooms or have a little school, and we use that facility to do the training. So that makes it very comfortable for them as well. And what we've also done is to really break down the training into very practical sections as well. So for instance, when we're talking about soil texture and soil formation, we actually go and dig a pit in their field and actually just show them practically there so that they can actually see what we are talking about, and then get them to also participate and give us their experiences. And sometimes we even walk around the fields and be able to show that, okay, fine, the problem you made here and why your soil looking like this is because of that, and they can compare. So make it very, very practical. Now, why is this all important for mechanization? Because before you can actually put a tractor into your ground, you need to understand your soils, you need to understand the crop you're working with, you need to understand, the fertilizers that you're going to be using, because if you don't, actually using a tractor without that information can actually damage your soil some more. So we need to do that, and that is very important information and training that farmers need. So the other thing then, we think that it needs to be a policy guideline from the government as to how mechanization will then be conducted in the country. We know that there's a lot of programs, for instance, were the More Food program that was in many countries in West Africa, that was, promoting mechanization. And some of the things that were not done properly was the fact that there wasn't much training done before these tractors were delivered. But also, again, women were not really included in the process. So we found that women were then left out. So I think that's, I'm running out of time, but I think those are some of the things that we need to look at when it comes to mechanizing. And I think my last comment is that if we can begin to slowly mechanize, remove the drudgery of the farm work from the women, give them more time to do other things, and also free children, school-going children, from that process, so that the girls can go to school, they can spend more time. I know Maggie was saying that females don't spend enough time in their businesses. I think the same way we need to have girl children spending more time in school, reading their books, so they can really become sort of equal partners when it comes to getting opportunities later on in their adult years. So for now, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kalongo. Really interesting. Good to hear some really basic practical things of how we can make services and equipment more accessible to women. And I know I'm very excited about driving a tractor the next time I go to Zambia, so when I can actually something to look forward to on my next travels.
You're welcome.
We'll keep more of the questions for the Q&A at the end. So I'd like to introduce everybody now to kind of going from the hot temperatures of Zambia to skiing up in Norway, where our next speaker, Winifred Patricia Johansson, is based. Winifred is Senior Vice President and Chair of the Board at Quantafuel, where plastic waste upgraded into high demand products. Not to give too much away about Winifred's journey, but she also worked in the oil and gas sector, very male dominated. So she's going to talk to us about her personal journey from her home base town in Uganda, talking about her moving through the corridors of the corporate world and the importance of diversity in race, gender, age, ideologies, and how this has helped shape her and her leadership style. So very welcome, Winifred. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Orla. I was a bit nervous coming after all these brilliant presentations, and I'm really so inspired by Anne-Marie and Margaret and the others, and I will be calling you afterwards to pick your brains. For me, this is a learning session. My mantra is we are each other's keepers and we are each other's teachers, and I really thank South Africa for this opportunity to share my journey and to learn a little and maybe teach a little. As Orla said, I am living in a small village outside Oslo and Drøbak, and I originate from a small village outside Gulu in Uganda. The contrasts could not have been any different. I think my journey is an interesting one, or perhaps not the straight one. I should say it's a bunch of curves, and I've never really done anything straight. I possibly wasn't born straight either. I work in Quantafuel, which converts, it's a company that is converting low-grade plastic waste to chemical feedstock. That's chemical recycling of plastics. I'll come back to why I'm doing that and how I ended up there. But my background is, I would say, rather chaotic. By profession, I am a mechanical engineer. I left Uganda when I was 16, joined my family in Norway, studied mechanical engineering. Never really decided whether I wanted to do solid mechanics or fluid mechanics. And so I decided to be in the middle, do something where I was versatile. I could always be a potato. I could do fluid, I could do construction. And I was always good at trying to understand why things break. So I ended up doing something as boring as fracture mechanics. So you might understand that. And during my education, again, I did not take a straight path. My mother wanted me to study oil and gas engineering because that's where the money was. And that's what I started with. And when I got there, I realized this really is not my passion. You know, I slept through geology, I slept through rocks and minerals, and I would wake up in the classes where everybody slept. And so one day I went to the professor and, I just told him, I feel like I'm a fish on dry land. I'm not landing in this. And he said, child, you're in the wrong faculty. And so I decided very quickly to change faculties to mechanical engineering, but I did not want to hurt my mother because this was her choice. So I studied, I had to do parallel. I had to take up first year of mechanical engineering while doing second year at the same time, so I would not lose a year. And my plan was, when I finish this, then I can tell her that I successfully transitioned. And I think I'll go back to this on social control, who your mentors are, who helps you make your decisions. A lot of times we conform in our decision-making processes. We don't do what we really want to do, but we want to do what is expected of us. And that, for me, that was what was expected of me. And with a lot of hard work, I did succeed, and eventually did tell my mother, and she actually did not, she wasn't that upset about it. In a way, I had compounded her fears and my fears and made them into what became my decision-making process. I remember starting at the university and looking around through all the faculties and thinking, there's just me. I mean, nobody else looks like me, really. In a university of possibly 1,000 people, at up to the level of masters, excluding PhD students who would come in from NORAD, I really was the only Black student. Not just only Black female, the only Black student at that time. That's a bit scary, because I have sought to find mentors. I've sought to find people who look like me, who've succeeded, who've done these things. And I often felt lonely. Who was I to play ball with? Who were my people? And so I had to create my own tribe, my own people around me, selected my friends who I felt would represent this eclectic mix of ideas, of backgrounds, of thought that would replace that which I did not have. And I think this is one of the challenges we will need to talk about going forward. Who are our mentors? When our girl children look at us, when the African girl looks up and says, I want to go and do engineering, or I want to go and do aeronautics, who are our role models? Who is tossing them a bone? Who is sitting down with them and saying, this is how I did it, this was my network, this is how I thought, this is where I failed, this is how I succeeded? We lack that. I at least lacked that very much. And that's important. It is really, really important. And I'll come back to that. And with a bit of luck and all that, and a lot of hard work, I got a job. My first job after university in the automotive sector. I went into base engine building engines for Volvo cars. I had done some agriculture in all levels, so I could take apart an engine. That was, taking apart stuff's never been a problem for me. So I understood it, but it was, again, looking around and feeling, it's just one of me. Where's everybody else? Who looks like me, who talks like me, who walks like me. And I just moved into this new city and moved from Italy to Gothenburg. And I remember it had rained 3 weeks non-stop. And I was so depressed. I was so alone, I needed people like me. And I did the most irrational thing, which I do a lot of irrational things, you will find out. I actually took the phone book, a big fat phone book, and I started looking at it from A to B to C to D to E. I was trying to find somebody who had a name I could recognize and call up and say, hey, are you one of me? And lo and behold, at O, A, B, C, D, the alphabet's very long till you get to O. And I found a name, O, and I thought, this sounds like my people. This is my kind of people. And I picked up the phone and I called and say, hey, I'm Patricia, really just moved in here. I'm lonely as hell and I'm going insane with this rain. Are you my people? Can I make you my tribe? And that is how I broke a barrier. You know, somebody at the end of the phone was like, "Oh, that's really nice. Why don't you come for dinner?" You know, then that's, I think I would characterize that as almost as idiotic courage. I had nothing to lose, and I put myself out there. I could have been rejected. This person could have slammed the phone and say, "You're nuts. I don't want anything to do with you." Are we teaching our children that courage? It's okay to step out of your comfort zone. It's okay to cry out and say, "You know what? I need a hand." I think part of my conditioning as a child growing up has been women, we work and work and work. We are meant to solve all the problems, and we shouldn't even ask for help, you know? But we are mortal. I think that's something we need to break down to our girls, and break down to not just the African girl child, but to all the other girl children as well. We're all mortal, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to come out of your comfort zone and show that vulnerability as well, because it's through that you grow. And that's been part of it. So at least for me. So anyhow, I had a good life in Gothenburg, and at some point we decided to move back to Norway, my husband and I. And it was the same thing, moving to a new sector, to oil and gas. I had a scientific background. I knew what I was going to do mechanically as an engineer, but this was a whole other ball game. It was a whole other industry, going into the subsea sector. And again, I land into this place and I think, for heaven's sake, where are people like me? And I almost felt like, is it a curse or a blessing that I always find myself a minority or a majority of one, as I should call it. But there are lessons in this as well. Because I'm me, I am judged as me. I'm not judged as a group. But there is a responsibility to that, which I take very seriously. If I'm the first person that is entering an organization of my heritage, of my background, of my skin color, I want to make sure that when I leave that organization, I have destroyed some of the biases. So the next person who comes in is not going to be met with the same biases that might have kept me out. You know, am I lazy? Am I diligent? Am I delivering value for money? Am I kind? Am I friendly? Am I good? And at the same time, am I sharing my network? Because there is a battle cannot be won with only the offensive. You know, if you take look at all battles. If you took a town, you have to secure it. You have to make sure that reinforcement comes in. I look at myself as the head of a spear. Now, when I get in, who am I pulling in with me? It may not be physically, but it can be psychologically. We have to help break down the biases in society that keep our girls or that keep our women from getting in. There's a responsibility that comes with it. So I'm appealing to my sisters who have made it to where we are now. Look back and ask, who have I inspired today? Have I shared my network? Who have I encouraged? Who have I advised? Who have I been a light to? Because a pyramid, you're at the top of the pyramid. There's still a lot of people at the bottom, and we need to help each other climb. And if we don't do that for each other, we cannot expect that the men are going to do it. We have to lead by example. So what can I say about oil and gas and subsea? Very male, very white, not particularly young. And I resonate with a lot of the things that my sisters have said today. When you come in, you're not taken serious. I've experienced that, you know. I worked with contract negotiations across the world, from the Gulf of Mexico, Malaysia, Asia Pacific, West Africa, you name it. And I've seen the disappointment in people's faces when I show up the first time and they're expecting a man or they're expecting a white woman. I don't fit the bill. And I have to build that repertoire every single time I started with a new client, that yes, I'm actually a woman. Yes, I'm still Black, And by God, I've got gray hair. I've had it since I was 5. There's nothing I can do about it, you know, but I know what I'm doing. And that is how I've been able to navigate the space I'm in. When I got the invitation to speak here and to speak about my journey to the boardroom, it hit me and I was like, blimey, I'm in the boardroom. I'd never really thought about that. I have worked. I have focused on solving problems that I'm passionate about. I have never sought leadership per se. And I still look at myself as one who is moving forward, trying to solve the problems that I see in front of me. But I don't really see myself as a leader. And maybe that's a blessing, and maybe that's a curse. But for me, it's the thread in all I have done. I went from oil and gas, transitioned to plastic, to managing plastic waste. I knew very little about plastic waste and chemical recycling. In fact, when I was called for the interview, I did not apply for the job, actually. When I was called for the interview, I was headhunted for it. I looked at the management team, and the management, all male, all white. And I looked at the board, and all male, all white. And I remember sending a text message to the recruiter and saying, you know, I'm going to stick out like weed, right? I'm going to stick out like weed on a manicured lawn. And he wrote back and said, oh, no, you're going to be like a flower. And, you know, but then I thought about it and I wrote back to him and I said, you know what? I'm good with weed. I'm a dandelion. A weed does not need manure. How many of you have to plant weeds? How many of you have to spray the weeds? How many of you have to nurture the weeds? I look at myself now as that weed. I have flown from my Uganda, flown from Gulu. I have landed where I have landed, and it doesn't matter where I have landed. I landed in Norway, I landed in Italy, I landed in Sweden, I landed back to Norway, I land anywhere. And like that dandelion seed, I have learned to send my root, to anchor myself and still blossom. And I hope I can be an inspiration. I hope I can be an inspiration, at least to one person. Now, as a director in Partner Africa, I'm very passionate about the things that we do there. And it's that empowerment through sustainable, ethical trade. We go back to some of the challenges that we've talked about. Access to education. If we have sustainable trade, we have fair pay, we have social justice. The girl child will get an education. The girl child will rise. The girl child will have an opportunity. Charity is fantastic, but it's not sustainable long term. And companies that are investing and are working in Africa are working for profit. But let's ensure that in the profit, that there is fairness, there's fair trade in it. And my appeal to these organizations is very simple. If you have a good, sustainable supply chain where everybody wins, you will actually make more profit because everybody is invested in that success. I look at business not as a food chain. I look at it as a food web. It's an ecosystem where we are all able to do better if we support each other's growth and development. And so I'm very passionate about the work that we do in Partner Africa, in consultancy and in advisory. And actually, I didn't know I was in the boardroom, but now I know. I'm very happy about that. So I think we're running out of time. So I just have 5 things I want to share as my learnings, having gone through the journey that I have gone through. First thing is leadership starts from home. We say charity starts from home. Leadership starts from home. Let the girl child speak. Let the child speak. I came from, I would say, an interesting home because children should be seen, not heard. At the same time, I had I have a very strong mother who's very vocal, but I also had a rebel father. I remember one particular episode. I must have been 9 or 10, and he picked me up and took me to church. And I was wearing trousers, turquoise trousers with 5 pockets. I remember that very well. Carrera 5 pockets. And from church, he took me to grandma. Grandma was very traditional. For her, you do not go to church in trousers, and women do not wear trousers, and you do not climb trees. That was my passion. And when we got home to grandma, I knew she was going to be upset. And I told my father, I said, you know, grandma is going to be upset. He turned and looked at me in the car, and he said, if you cannot stand your grounds with people that love you, how will you stand to the world? If you cannot speak up to those who love you, you will not speak up outside. And with that, he opened the car, he went the other way, he let me out, and grandma tore me to bits. And I learned a very important lesson that day. Let the child speak. It's very difficult as parents, and I struggle with it, I will admit, to give that room for my children to argue against me, to have their opinions, to have their say, to win their victories. But I think that's an important arena where we need to start. We are domesticating our children into what we think should be the norm. Let the girl child speak. Leadership starts from home. The second point I want to share with my sisters, make a decision, stop procrastinating. Many of you are sitting with good ideas. You're going to make a business plan, then you're going to make this strategy plan, then you're going to make this, you're going to make this. In 5 years, you're still making a plan. And you know what? If you're going to operate in Africa, Africa is like a snake. It moves, it meanders. It's not standing still. So the plan you made last month is obsolete this month. Get on the ground, do what you have to do, ride the flow. Procrastination is not your friend. Another thing I want to say is be competitive. A lot of times when I talk to other women, they'll say, oh, you know, I can't be a manager. I'm still trying to get an MBA and I need this and I need that. If our African sisters had the same upbringing as I did, we've been through leadership and management school since we were born. What the MBA is going to teach you is, but perhaps just how to structure what that which you have learned, you know. But a lot of these things you have learned from day one. You've learned to care. You've learned to observe. You've learned to take decisions. You've actually learned to solve problems. You've been solving problems ever since you were little. At least for me, I knew that I could not use the B word at home, and that is, I'm bored. You know, bored, bored got you washing the bathroom floors with a toothbrush. Mm-hmm. We are hardworking. We know all these things. And if you look back to, you know, for me, when maybe I'm the wrong person to say you don't need an MBA to be a leader. I took my MBA in Aberdeen. And really what I learned in Aberdeen was just the research of what I had already learned from my grandmother. And she had no formal education, you know, simple principles. Now I'm researching in a PhD in sense making. And I can sum that up in 3 sentences that my grandmothers would say. You saw it? Mm-hmm. How did you see it? And how did the other person see it? So you saw it differently. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm going to do for 4 years, researching sense making, which is something that my grandmother summarizes in 3 sentences. So we have the knowledge. We just need that confidence. Be brave enough, be bold enough. A man is not going to stand and say, you know, I'm still unsure to apply for this management job. He's going to put in an application. I'm good, I can do this and do this. Half the things he's going to put in that application, he doesn't know. But you know too much already and yet undervalue what you know. Be confident enough to say, I want this. And again, it is not wrong to want. We are conditioned we are actually conditioned to that wanting is bad. Ambition is bad. You shall wait in line until somebody hands you that ticket. I lived like that for a long time. I did not see that progression in my career until I had to come around and say, hey, you know, that dude got before me in line. Really? Are you shitting me? Excuse my language. You know, you've got to want it. And don't be afraid. There's nothing shameful about this. Be competitive, be confident, and be willing to know to learn what you don't know. Nobody knows it all. It's all. Nobody knows it all. The fourth thing I want to say is choose your crowd. Choose your crowd. You are the average of the 5 people in your innermost circle. You are that average. So if you're hanging around people who are negative and always low and pessimistic and that is the mindset you will attract. That's the mindset you will be in. So seek different ideas and don't just stick with the yay sayers, you know. Have people that will tell you no. Have people that will challenge you a little. My tribe or my people are very mixed. I've got very old people in my circle. I've got very young people. I've got men. I've got women. I've got all races pretty much from all over the place. Because everybody comes with a different idea. And that diversity is not just for a workplace. It's diversity that also lifts you up, your very own diversity circle. You cannot learn if you do not get out of the yes circle. And I've learned that, and I'm very, very happy with the people that I have around me, you know, and appreciative. And if any of you are watching today, thank you very much. The last thing I want to say, I think I'm out of time now, is it's challenging. It is challenging. I don't think any leader, any CEO, any chairman of any board is going to come and tell you it was all smooth sailing. I did this, I did that, I did that. There will be pitfalls. There will be challenges, because in a way, when people like us, the wild cards, you know, the underdogs come in, you disrupt. We are also disruptors. You disrupt the flow of things because you are not. You are a banana coming into a bowl of apples. You know, there will be challenges. Manage that, accept that, listen, feel it, you know, move with your strategy. If something is not working, be emergent, you know, not just because you set this strategy on paper doesn't mean it's what it is. It's only what's on your tombstone that's on stone. And that's when you cannot change anything. As long as you're still alive and it's only on paper, you can burn that paper. You can change, you can mold it, you can move on. And growth is uncomfortable. Like picking up that phone after going from A to O, that's not comfortable. But the people I met, the tribe that I got out of that was fantastic. Growth is painful. Growth is painful. Growth is challenging. Growth is sacrifice. When I started doing my MBA, I had to look at my time and decide, what is it I have to sacrifice? The 24 hours to the day. I sacrificed television. Up to today, I don't know how my television works. I don't know which series and programs people are watching, because that was the time that I had to sacrifice. You may have to sacrifice some people. You may have to draw some boundaries around you to say, right now, I'm in a position where I need to grow my business. I cannot support the extended family, or I cannot support everybody who comes to me as an emergency station. And for us Black women, we will understand what I'm saying about this. You know, you are slightly successful, you become the 911 of everybody. If you're going to move your business at that point, it's okay to say, you know what, this is where I'm putting a boundary right now. I need to have this in order to grow. But as we grow, let's grow and grow with each other. The snake that doesn't break out of its skin will die. You have to break off that skin to generate new skin. And that is growth. And that's what I hope, that's the message I hope I can leave you with today. It is possible. Anything's possible. If we support each other, we lean on each other, we build each other, we challenge each other, we question each other, we motivate each other, we teach each other, and we keep each other. Thank you. Sorry, I think I ran out of time.
Yeah, but there was no way I could cut across to you. That was outstanding. I think, George, we need to enter a round of applause facility on Zoom. The comments coming through are just how inspirational you were, Winifred. That was true. That was brilliant. Thank you. You're quite an inspiration and something else. There were questions coming through from Sylvia, but she said you answered all of them. A fellow Ugandan lady, Sylvia Gavigan, was honorary consul for Uganda in Ireland. So thank you so much. Hilary, I'll pass over to you now, just to talk us through Lady Agri Impact Investment Hub. So it's Hilary's fellow Irish woman based in Brussels. So the co-founder of Lady Agri. It's a network of international professionals that support women agri entrepreneurs in Africa. She's dedicated her career to social impact programs across sub-Saharan Africa around entrepreneurship and obviously targeting women. So Hilary is going to lead us off with a short video just to give us an overview of Lady Agri's work.
Look through our lens and see what we see. Energy, determination, and pure tenacity. She rises every morning, frail, vulnerable, no way. She bears the strength of 10,000 armies, a locomotive driving forth, pulling so many wagons, trailblazing forward on and on. We stand in her corner. We stand by her side. We carry her when necessary, not aid but pride. She must reach her full potential, for behind her are thousands counting on her. With her comes a rising tide. Daughters, sisters, sons, she carries them all. If she can make it, they too will rise. The movement, pure energy, positive, regenerating, renewing, cyclical power. Just imagine what we can build together, the highest tower. So we whisper together, and that whisper will become a roar. It's time to let her in and open the door. For she does not come alone, but with her an army 10,000 strong. Look through our lens and see what we see. Energy, determination, and pure tenacity. So give her the tools to grow, build, and strive. If only the doors would open, then she and all behind her could thrive. Markets, banks, it's time for change. Let her in, listen, it's a new age. Look through our lens and see what we see. Energy, determination, and pure tenacity.
Good morning or almost good afternoon from Brussels. I love to say good morning Dublin because it makes me quite homesick, as you can imagine. Haven't been home in the last year given the COVID scenario. So yes, Lady Agri, listening to Winifred, listening to Anne-Marie Kalongo, Margaret Sonali. It's funny when you look in as a fellow panelist, and sometimes the expression on the faces shows that we're very much connected, and the reaction to each other's what each of us was saying, it hits home. So Lady Agri. So I discovered Africa at 17. My father was working out there and went out for my summer. And he said I could stay if I could learn something. And I did, and I postponed my starting in University College Cork. So I was there for a year and a half. It has marked my career decisions and my view on things ever since. I've spent more time in Africa than I have in Ireland, and worked in rural development and SME support and supporting women throughout my career. So when I saw a change in 2015, that suddenly agri-business, agri-investment suddenly became a sexy topic. There was a change here in the Brussels bubble. There was a change in the discussions with the African Union. There was a change around these European partnership agreements. And suddenly we were talking about agri, we were talking about big ticket sizes, we were talking about foreign direct investment, we were talking about agri transformation. And of all of those discussions, there was no mention of women. And so it was impossible for me, having spent so long working across Africa, whether it be Senegal, Cameroon, Kenya, Botswana, to actually talk about agriculture and not about women. So that's when it was about stepping out of the comfort zone, saying, let's make a career change. I started talking with others around me, and I was joined by two co-founders, Ayele Gabiam, who's from Togo, and Aida Bakri, who's from Ethiopia. There was no surprise that we were speaking the same language, and we had the same worries as such, that there would be a large risk of exclusion from these new investments if we didn't bring the voice of women agri-entrepreneurs and women in the agri-value chains to the table. We also started looking about what works. It was clear that from any small investment I have seen across Africa in women, we've had massive social impact, and it is the most sustainable impact as well. I was laughing a little bit when I was thinking about Kalongo and the husband buying the bicycle, that despite all of the efforts from the women in the family and perhaps children and everything, women think of others. They think of their children first. Food security is the top priority. After that comes the community, maybe extended family community. And so it didn't make any sense that the investments that were coming in one way, were de-risking large agri corporates, not to be politically correct, sometimes expatriate owned, and I'm sure Anne-Marie will agree with me on that. There's lots of facilities to de-risk the investment coming in from Europe into Africa. However, the mechanisms in place to give access to finance for women to actually develop their agribusiness and appropriate finance are very, very few. We started our journey by taking on the banks. So we did a scan of the development finance banks all across Europe who would be carrying these investments and de-risking guarantees. And we went into the boardroom with them. We went in and spoke with the investment officers. And it was very clear that women were put into the miserable category fairly quickly. They were put into the high risk category. And also from a purely economical sense, it was more work. It was more work for them to drop the fish hook down further. Instead of just catching the big fish and the big numbers, to drop that hook down further and make more of an effort to understand how's that agri supply chain structured? Who's actually working in it? And what is the actual behavior of perhaps the agri corporates who are going to receive the direct investment? So from that, we moved on and we've engaged now in discussions. We've engaged in a number of negotiations, I would say, with the larger agri commercial banks, with those who, from a marketing point of view, women are on the poster. women are on the advertisements. But when you look behind the scenes, there's very little access, as I said, due to collateral issues, due to not even just being taken seriously. Aida, my co-founder from Ethiopia, says she walks into a bank in Ethiopia and the credit officer will look directly at her husband, even though she's going in with the bank book. So there are systemic challenges there that we need to challenge. And I suppose that's where we took our courage in hand at Lady Agri and we started challenging those. Perhaps another issue which has come up is legitimacy, saying, well, you're an Irish woman, and how could you possibly think you could speak on behalf of African women agri-entrepreneurs? And my answer to that is, I have come from, my grandfather was a small producer, 3 hectares, 9 children in the family. I'm the first generation to get to university. I've had a very privileged life. And if I don't raise my voice, and if I don't use that to open doors so that the women African entrepreneurs can come in behind me and be listened to more, then I'm not doing my job as a woman and as a mother. We have crossed paths with Self-Help Africa in our work in Malawi, in Zambia and Kenya, and a shout out to all the great work that is being done by their teams. We believe in a holistic investment approach. It's investment in terms of providing the technical capacity, the knowledge and the know-how so that women can trade, so that they're on top of their game. When we talk about the African Free Trade Agreement, does each of our women entrepreneurs, do they understand what's going to be asked for next year or the year after at the border posts if she's exporting produce across the border? Does she know that there's a change at the moment coming in from the European side? We talk about Green Deal, circular economy. So what's her access to eco-friendly packaging? How can she stay in that market? So we get very granular in terms of providing responses. We dig into the details. We dig into the terms and conditions that are written in very small print at the end of any contract that any of the women would have if they're dealing with an impact investor, if they're dealing with their bank, or if they're dealing with a buyer. The other issues we look at is that any women entrepreneur who is supported by Lady Agri has to sign a social impact charter. And by that I mean, we believe that we have a responsibility to create a rising tide. And I think there I very much join Winifred in saying we need to develop sustainable supply chains, sustainable and fair food supply chains. We need to get on and beyond the fact of just seeing women as cheap labor, as seasonal workers. And we need to be brave and put their name on a contract. We need to be brave and perhaps put a positive pricing system in place. And I look at what all Anne-Marie and her sister have put in place in terms of rigorous procedures, processes. Those are all lessons learned, Anne-Marie, that you've brought home. And by putting those in place, we make sure that women are visible and valued. And I think the biggest problem we have in agri-value chains is that women are invisible. And so they're invisible to the markets, they're invisible to buyers, they're invisible to potential off-takers. And so we need to make sure that we're supporting businesses who have an inclusive business model. And I'm not saying that from the point of view of jargon. I'm talking about digging really into the nuts and bolts on how we're valuing women. So that's Lady Agri in a nutshell, Orla. I hope I haven't been too long and that I've captured the message and that that's enough for now. If there's questions and answers, I'm very willing to answer them, of course.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hilary. No, you haven't gone over at all. We're a little bit over time-wise generally, but that's my fault for letting some people talk, but it was just so inspiring to hear what everybody had to say. So it was great to let people talk. When we haven't talked about COVID today. We've managed to avoid it, so sorry people if I'm going to kind of bring it into the conversation. But as part of, I mean, we're saying that women, female-led companies in particular, were harder hit and faster hit than male-led companies, shall we say. How do we ensure, I mean, I think a lot of what we're saying, it's not just about kind of building that better after COVID, it's more general, but how do we really ensure that women are visible, that they don't disappear back in? Because there's a lot of talk now, we've seen the increases in gender-based violence and the economic hardship that have hit women, so people are talking about it a lot, but is there a danger that we just settle back into post-COVID world? So how do we kind of keep the momentum going now on making sure that women do remain visible?
Is that to me?
Sorry, yes, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I think with every crisis, I think we're coming out of almost a war scenario from what we've been in and what we've gone through to. And if we look back to what happened kind of post-World War II, women were really appreciated for their contributions. And then it just went back into the status quo. So I think our job now is to make sure that it doesn't go back to the status quo. And what was interesting is that 2019, when we were talking to the banks, they were saying, no, small ticket sizes, as I said, not earning foreign currency, so really not interesting as an investment. And then lo and behold, when the global supply chains stopped, were disrupted, who was feeding the local market? Who was actually bringing food produce to the local supermarkets? Who was changing their business model very quickly and starting, door-to-door sales. Women were agile. They showed that they were able to bring themselves together collectively. We have some fantastic examples in Nigeria and Kenya where women changed their business model very quickly to adapt to the circumstances. And also by leaning in and networking with other previously probably competitors, and now they were forming alliances. So now we need to, I think, keep that in mind and saying, well, if we want a sustainable food system, we need to be investing into those who are actually producing. And we also need to see that if imports were down, how can we ensure that there's access to the inputs, quality seed, technology, equipment. I have a dream, Kalongo, of this tractor school for women, that if we do bring in mechanization, that women have full access. And that we're also supporting agri-services that have women, not as their CSR project, but as built in to their business model, because they see them as potential customers. And sometimes I draw the analogy with car insurance. So from an insurer's point of view, women are a better bet. There's less accidents. They'll take less risk. They mightn't be driving the large Porsche, but they're using their vehicle, they're using it for their business, they're using it to get their kids to school, and they're a better bet from an insurance point of view. And I think in all of that, we need to transfer that now when we look at agribusiness support strategies, the investment climate, building that long-term ecosystem that all of those wonderful women on the call today and who are listening in to us can actually thrive and build back better. They have massive resilience, massive potential, and I hope that's something that has come across in the Lady Agri video today. We're really trying to break away from this miserable narrative because it's bad for women's self-confidence and it's bad for the image as well that we were giving of agriculture in Africa. Outside of agriculture, there aren't many alternatives in rural areas. So if we bring in a strong agri-pole, agri-development, foreign investment, what is going to happen to all of those kids and to all of those women who are currently involved in agriculture? So we need to keep very smart, gender smart, in terms of the inclusive business models we promote in building back better. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Hilary. So I'm just looking at the kind of questions that we have on the Q&A panel here. Anne-Marie, can I put a question to you that's come in from Sheila, asking one of the challenges that you faced was being questioned at every turn as a female leader, questions that wouldn't normally be asked of male leaders or colleagues. So how did you deal with male employees who weren't being used to being managed by by women. Did you hear the question?
No, I didn't.
Sorry, so
Connection is.
when one of the challenges. Oh, sorry.
Sorry?
I said one of the challenges that you had faced was being challenged as a woman by your employees. They wouldn't questions they would ask.
Yes.
They would normally ask men. How did you deal with that?
The challenges are up and all, well, they're up and less, but they used to happen all the time from the beginning. And it's one of those things you have to walk in their shoes. And one of the things that I learned from pretty early on is never to take it personal. It was not personal. Sometimes it was from sheer arrogance, ignorance, and sometimes it was from a cultural point of view. So you take the opportunity to educate and inform, as long as someone was not being rude. But it happened all the time in the beginning, and you take time out. You're like, okay, I hear the question you're asking, but here is a different way to look at it. And the analogy I used to use is, or tell people, look, two people go to a cinema. One person comes out saying that was the worst movie they've ever watched. Another person would say that is the best movie they've ever watched. Who's right, who's wrong? Both are right. So there are different perspectives, there are different ways to see the same thing. So initially there was a lot of education. And one of the things that we learned pretty early on is in our companies, we created gender, tribal, age, and educational diversity by ensuring that we have, and we really went out of our way to ensure we had as many tribes represented as possible. We had young men, old men, young women, old women, people right across different social structures. By not, it's like what Winnie was saying, who are you surrounding yourself with? By ensuring that people surrounding themselves with different people, you automatically created an environment where people were seeing different things. So you almost forced that from the beginning. And one of the things that I enjoy the most is that when I walk into any of our locations, the language people are speaking is either English or Kiswahili, because there's so much diversity. And the other thing that we also introduce, and this is really more my sister saying, you know what, we have to encourage people to speak out. We introduced, these all from the Israeli concept, the 6-man concept. If everybody says yes, 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 the 6th person in our meeting will be like, now you're the one, be prepared to say no with reasons why. And from a very early age, from a very early age of the company, we encourage diversity, speaking up, but respect. We made it very clear that disrespect, you are going to get kicked out of the company. Violence, you're kicked out. Drinking or alcohol or even chewing fat, which was quite common in the beginning, you do any of that, you are out. But you stay here, and we were encouraging different viewpoints. And that, I suppose that made it easier for me, but we got a lot of challenges, particularly in the areas where we were seen not to have the natural skills because we were women. So I shared with you about drivers, about vehicles, that kind of thing. And yet today, the same guys would turn on and say, you know a lot about vehicles. Yes, if you don't, we just had a very clear view of how we're going to manage our vehicles. We have had trucks that have done over 1 million kilometers, and the engine has never been changed, and it's not at a major breakdown, because we do a lot of preventative caring for the vehicles. But initially, our approach was questioned. So it's a case of, almost like You're encouraging people to speak with respect, encouraging different viewpoints, and then pointing out there's another way to do things.
Thanks.
And when all else fails, I'll say, you know what? It's my company. I make a mistake. I pay the bloody school fees. You've gone through some of these. You're like, you know what? If I'm wrong, I'm prepared to pay the school fees. But let's do it the way that I want it done.
Yeah, I think sometimes you're allowed to say, because I said so.
Yeah, because I said so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Summary. Sonali, a question for you. As was the organization you're with is slightly different to the other ones here. So as a funder, as it were, what percentage of your loan book would be to women? And one of the questions from Sylvia was that I love the challenges we've raised have been around for a long time, but is Rabobank Foundation doing anything specifically to address the issues around training and entrepreneurship? And when they've had no education, so literacy is really terribly poor. What is the foundation doing?
So with regard to the percentage of women, I wouldn't have an answer off the cuff, or rather we don't keep that parameter in our books. But as I said, we look at funding with a lens of gender-powered indicators, so that we could monitor the impact throughout the life of the project. It's very easy to say that, okay, we have X amount of funding for women-focused and women-engaged companies or certain value chains. We have found in the past that then you have applications and proposals that are just almost doctored to fit under that bill. And once you look at it and you look at from a point of then looking at measuring impact of women engagement through the project, you don't often see that. And that's why we're looking at a focus of indicators and disaggregated indicators throughout the projects in various value chains. The question about training and in terms of rural women, the training centers that we have, the Agribusiness Development Center in Uganda and NMB Foundation in Tanzania. That is an avenue or channel that we are, I can't say we've already had projects strictly focused on women coaching, etc., but there are requests and we're actually looking at designing such kind of, or rather inculcating those kind of features into the other training modules at cooperative levels, which, as I said, also differ with regard to value chains and how many women are engaged at what levels in various value chains. So that's an approach we're taking as Rabo Foundation.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm very conscious of time, and we're way over, and people are starting to drop off on the attendee side. But I'd like to give anybody on the panel another opportunity if there's anything that you were a burning desire to say that you didn't manage to get across in your presentation or your earlier on. Please feel free to jump in now. If not, I will wind up.
Well, just one from me, Orla. I think what comes across from what my fellow panelists have said, and also my experience, is that when a woman is successful and they have a lot of achievements, there is this push to actually explain why, and it has to be referenced, and usually it's referenced to either a supportive husband or a good father or brothers. I think people have problems actually saying the woman is successful and it's in her own right. And I think that's one of the perceptions. And I was actually seething with anger for many days when I read in one of the tweets that someone posted on Ngozi's appointment to WTO, was that we should congratulate her husband because it's without his support and allowing her to do what she wanted to do, she would not be in that position. So I think that's one of the major problems, is that our success cannot be attributed to ourselves in our own rights. It has to be explained. There has to be a man, whether husband, brother, or grandfather, or anything, that's the reason why you're successful. On your own, you're not. And I think that's something that we really need to start working on. And I like what Winfried said, that it has to start in the home. We must already begin to encourage our sons to appreciate the efforts that their sisters, I know that even with my own nephews and nieces, that there's always this thing of, oh no, but you couldn't have done that if I hadn't done this for you. You couldn't have done that if I, so I think we need to really take that from home. Charity begins at home, leadership begins at home, and begin to work on that. That's my thinking.
There's something also I'd like to add when you're talking about charity. There's almost this feeling that, oh, if you have more women in your business, if you do all of these, you're going to make less money. Actually, one of the philosophies my sister and I embraced right from the get-go is that, and this is a saying, and we have it all over our walls. I don't know if I can say that, and that is doing well while doing good. We want to make money, that's clear. We want to make a profit, that's clear. But while we're doing that, we want to do good across the board. We are not a charity case. We cannot afford it. We cannot afford to have numbers of women on our employment for the sake of having women. But when we do good by people, we ensure that we are paying well, which is slightly above market rate. We ensure we feed our people. We make it very clear we are equitable. We do the same thing with our suppliers, the same thing with our farmers, the same thing with our end customers. We want to do good. It's not just about making money. We want to do good, but we at the same time want to do well, and the two of them can coexist side by side. It's not a case of employing women and making excuses for them as women. No, they are coming in as employees. Yes, when I have a female employee, I may ask them more questions because they may not put their hand up. And the example I always point out is we had, for instance, this lady who came to us looking for work as a farmhand. And today she's one of my loss control managers. But she came in looking for work as a farmhand because she had been doing farming. But talking to her, I realized she was pretty sharp. And pretty soon I realized that after she finished a primary school, she was #2 in mathematics in Meru County, got a scholarship, but the father was like, why am I educating a girl? She went to look after the farm and to bring up her brothers, who went on all the way to university. And so she became a maid, became a farmer, and came to look for work as a farmer. And that to encourage her, and slowly grow her today. And 5 years later, she's one of my strongest loss control managers. But if I just listened to what she said, she would be a farmhand. I should have been happy being a farmhand, but it's asking the additional question, she's a woman. I mean, because I know she's a woman, she's not volunteering information, but it's still not a charity case. I have done good in this case, but she has helped me do well. And that is one of our overriding policies, doing well while doing good.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Anne-Marie. That's a great way to finish up on that. So, like I say, this is all we have time for today. So we've gone way over. So thank you to people for sticking on. I think it was well worthwhile to hear everything that our wonderful panel had to say. I think it's safe that we're all feeling a little bit more inspired and motivated following the contributions that we've heard over the past couple of hours. Some really simple steps as well, kind of that were being talked about. Use people's names, as Anne-Marie and Nancy. We call people by their names. We pay people. Kalonga's company. We just bring the training to them. Let's just do that little bit to encourage women to feel that participation and that they're valued, to encourage them to speak up and to speak out. The common thread coming from all of the speakers has been that need for the mentorship, that we can support each other along the journey, and it's our responsibility to do that and to bring people with us. And it's also important to realize that people are at different steps in the process. And it's not just about bringing women on the journey. It's crucially important to be involving men in this conversation and to recognize that they're coming at it from different standpoints and to work with them to bring them on this journey with us. It's starting at the home, from what Winifred is saying. It's all about how your education from the very beginning, as we all start out on this wonderful journey that is life. And Maggie, your point around success, it doesn't come to you, that you have to go and get it. So while it is about having that mentorship and encouraging women, it's about encouraging them to go and get it, not saying we are here to help you and to support, but to empower people to step up and to grab their success. I think we've seen from the various stories that the potential that women have to be kind of unleashing their energy and the enormous potential that can be reached with the right ecosystem. We can all work together to bring about the change. I suspect that LinkedIn is going to be extremely busy after this event. There'll be a lot of people reaching out for invitations amongst the panel and amongst the attendees. It's been a great dynamic between all of our speakers and some common themes coming through and the energy that you're taking from each other. So thank you very, very much on behalf of everybody in Self-Help Africa and our audience. I really want to thank each and every one of the speakers. So Sonali, Anne-Marie, Maggie, Kalango, Winifred and Hilary, big thank you to your time today and for your inspirational speaking to us, and thank my team obviously in Self-Help Africa, the communications and development education team that have been busy behind the scenes pulling all of this together. So thank you everybody, enjoy happy International Women's Day, enjoy the rest of it, whatever you have up to, and big thank you to people who it's a public holiday in many countries, so really appreciate you also taking time out of your days to join us on this. And
thank you. It was great to be part of this discussion. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you
Happy
so
to
much.
connect with all the ladies here, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Yeah,
Definitely.
bye.
See you in Nairobi.
oh,
Sure.
Hopefully soon.
Sounds good.
Definitely Nairobi.
Thank
Bye.
you all.
And we had a full participation at one point. There were 125 guests plus the panel, so it was a lot.
Excellent.
So,